All right, so rapper Lil Durk could potentially be spending the rest of his life in prison. And honestly, this is nothing short of a tragedy. Yet again, being a rapper proves to be one of the most dangerous professions in America. And this situation surrounding Lil Durk, is no exception. And he finds himself in custody now and he's not going to get bail. And why is he not going to get bail? Well, whenever you are facing criminal charges, the judge is going to make a decision on bail. And the two primary things that the judge is looking at when they're deciding bail are you going to be a flight risk? And are you going to be a danger to the community at large? And then will you be a danger to the alleged victims in the case? Or will you be a danger to any potential witnesses, right? And Lil Durk in this case just has strikes on all of those, right? Starting with whether he's going to be a flight risk. Well, the FBI basically intercepted his plans to leave the country and go to Italy. And not only that, it's not like he was just, planning to take a flight to Italy. He had booked flights to Dubai. So he booked a flight to Dubai. He booked another flight to Switzerland, I believe, and then so those were commercial flights. And then he actually ended up boarding, or he had plans to board a private plane to go to Italy. And so that alone just shows an intent to try and basically shake law enforcement and escape apprehension, right? So that's that flight risk, that factor is going to be through the roof. And then we have basically the seriousness of the offense. So a lot of times when the judge is looking at, are you going to be a danger, they're going to consider your criminal history. And I'm honestly not familiar with Lil Durk's criminal history, but even if you don't have any criminal history at all, based on the charges you're facing, the seriousness of the charges is going to have a large impact on whether they're going to consider you to be a danger. And so obviously this whole case surrounds a murder for hire conspiracy. And so when it comes to murder, I mean, it really doesn't get more serious than that, right? So if you're facing a murder charge, you're basically being accused of orchestrating this whole thing, masterminding it, funding it. Then for that charge, he's facing the rest of his life in prison, and so therefore he's going to be considered a danger. On top of that, when it comes to any potential witnesses, when you have a case like this, that's always going to be a concern for prosecutors and the judge, whether witnesses might be tampered with or dissuaded, threatened, things like that. And then also, the very subject of this murder for hire is still alive, right? So they were going after Quando Rondo. Obviously, he did not die; he survived, and his cousin is the one who ultimately got killed. And so the target of this conspiracy is still alive, and so therefore he arguably his life is at risk still, right? And so no judge is going to risk releasing Lil Durk in this situation and having him potentially escape, leaving the country, or putting other lives at risk. And so that's the analysis as far as bail goes. And like I said, this case or this charge carries a possibility of life in prison. And so one of the things, that comes to mind is the whole reason why we're here in the first place, and that comes down to revenge, right? Everybody knows there was the situation where King Von got into it with Quando Rondo's camp, and he ended up getting killed, right? So right outside of a nightclub in Atlanta, gets into a fight, and King Von gets killed, and King Von was Durk's man, right? And they're OTF, and so it's a record label, right? But what you end up having in these complaints, and one of the things that are different from federal complaints, from state complaints, is in a federal complaint, you're going to get what's called an affidavit, right? They're going to give you a good amount of facts regarding or facts that support the complaint, right? In state cases, they'll just list, what your charges are, but they don't really go into much detail in terms of what the actual facts are of the case, as opposed to in these federal cases, they'll attach an affidavit, which usually will have the credentials of the declarant. So the declarant's usually an agent, a federal agent, and they'll talk about, their experience. So I've been working, uh, investigating narcotics cases or investigating trafficking cases. I've been investigating whatever they have. They lay out their little resume, and then they go into the summary of probable cause. And in the summary of probable cause, they basically lay out their case, right? And depending on how detailed and elaborate the case is, it can be many, many pages. But a lot of times it's going to be a few pages and just giving you the details of the case. And they lay it out right here, basically that, King Von had been killed, right? And so the idea was that Lil Durk wanted to target Quando Rondo, right? And it was a plot for revenge. And I can tell you, man, in doing this a long time, so I've been a criminal defense attorney for 15 years. And whenever there's a violent crime, right, whether it's something as minor as a battery or simple, a simple battery assault, assault with a deadly weapon, all the way up to attempted murder or even a murder, whenever it's a crime out of revenge, it never leaves the person feeling fulfilled, right? Whatever you thought you were going to get out of, getting your get back is never what you thought it was going to be. And this is what is so troubling about this situation. And, I get it. I get it. Obviously, King Von was Lil Durk's man. And, and to lose your man in that way, right? And I've never had the experience of someone that close. I mean, I have. I've lost a homie, but to natural causes, right? I've lost a homie to natural causes, but I've never been in a situation where someone took out my man, right? And I can remember even time flies so fast as you get older, but it had to be around 10 years ago, right? One of my best friends, he needed to get an organ transplant, right? So he'd been on the list for some time. Things got pretty serious, and he needed to get a transplant. And I remember going to fly out to see him, right? Because we didn't live in the same city anymore. But I went to go fly out to see him. I was excited to see him because I hadn't seen him in a hot one. And I get to the hospital. He's there, his wife is standing there, and he's laid out in the hospital bed. And this dude's he's a vibrant dude, charismatic, big personality. And when I saw him on the hospital bed, even I can picture it right now. I just burst into tears. And I was supposed to go there, right, and be a rock, right, for my man and all of that. But it just hurt to see him in that way, to see him laid out on that hospital bed. And thank God he survived. All praise be to God. He survived. He's good now and everything. But to see him in that state and to know that this was from natural causes, I can only imagine. I can't imagine the pain of knowing that somebody took the life of your best friend or somebody who's very close to you. And with that pain, you feel like there's got to be something that you can do with that to ease the pain, to erase the pain, right? And I suppose it's natural to think that I need to take out the very person or the very people who caused this pain, right? And so that's where you have, all right, well, we got to go after this guy, man. Well, we got to go after Quando Rondo. And there's an element of influence, right? And it wasn't just his people, right? His closest people who all, Vaughn was their man too. It was the fans as well. I mean, how many times did we see, hashtag slide for Vaughn? So it came to a level where it wasn't even just him and his circle, now we got the whole nation or potentially the whole world of fans basically saying like, what are you going to do about this? When are you going to get your get back, right? And it's absolutely not an excuse or a justification, but I think that's definitely something that's going to have factored into deciding to really carry this thing out. But the reality is, I mean, um, you could take out dude and his family and the next 10 generations, but it never bring your man back, right? Nothing that you can do is going to bring King Von back, right? Nothing you can do is going to, fill that hole in your soul that'll be there forever. And so a lot of times, um, as a criminal defense attorney, we have these conversations with people after the fact, right? When they regret the situation afterwards, you're sitting in a jail cell, you're looking at years in prison, potentially the rest of your life, and you realize just how worth it was not, right? And that has to be some of the things that are going through his mind right now. I would imagine, but what they have is yeah, at a certain point that Lil Durk had put out a monetary, a monetary hit. They put out money on Quando Rondo's head, and what ends up linking him to all of this is basically they have what the plan was, right? So the transactions as far as the flight tickets, right? So the 5 individuals who ended up flying from Chicago to San Diego. So they didn't fly directly to LA. They flew to San Diego, ended up renting cars, driving from San Diego to LA. And there were also hotels that were booked. And so between the flights, the rental cars, and the hotel, these were used, these were charged to credit cards associated with Lil Durk and, businesses that are associated with him. And then they had the text message where he said, "Hey, don't don't put down any names, linked to me or something to that effect." They have that text message, and then ultimately, there's caught on surveillance video. I'm sure you guys have all seen it at this point, where you see the black Escalade that Quando Rondo was in, and then you see a white Infiniti and you see a white BMW, and those are the vehicles that end up pulling up on them. They fire at least, I think it was 18 rounds into the Escalade. And like I said, Quando Rondo's cousin ends up dying as a result. And this happened, in the middle of the day at a gas station, right? And so one of the other concerns, obviously from the prosecution, from law enforcement, and from the judge is that, people could have caught strays. One of these bullets could have hit one of these gas pumps and blew up the whole gas station. There's just all kinds of things that could have happened. A bullet, flying and hitting somebody driving down the road and end up causing a multiple car collision is just insanely dangerous behavior, right? But you have, all these links coming back to Durk, and it hasn't been necessarily brought out yet, and it would be pretty early for this to come out, but there's a possibility that they've gotten to one of these guys, right? A lot of times you may have, or the feds may have what they believe to be a pretty solid case, but if they can get somebody to flip, right? If they can get somebody to cooperate, then that just, that seals the deal for them, right? Because if I have somebody basically coming in and giving me the play-by-play, and from the Fed's perspective, they're like, we already know what happened, right? We just need you to confirm it for us, right? And so how they end up doing that is, this happened a couple years ago, right? So this wasn't recent. This happened a couple years ago in August of 2022, right? And so what'll happen is, they'll let you live. And you think you got away with everything. And so you'll just be out living life thinking everything is all good until they get you for something that has nothing to do with what they really want you for or who they really want to go after, right? So you'll get pulled over for a busted taillight. Turns out you got a bunch of guns under the seat. You got a bunch of drugs in the car. Whatever the situation is, and then you get arrested for that. It may even be by the local authorities. They arrest you for that, get you on over to the feds, and they're like, okay, well, you already have priors, right? And once you have priors, whether you're talking about state or a Fed case, when you have priors, it makes your exposure to the next case that much higher, right? So in California, if you have strike priors, then if you have a strike, that next offense that you have, it's going to be doubled, right? So if you would or otherwise be facing 4 years, that automatically doubles to 8, right? And it doesn't exactly work the same way on the federal side. But on the federal side, it almost looks like a multiplication table, right? So you have the offense category, and then you have the criminal history side, and then where those two things line up is what the time you'll be facing. And so the more serious the offense and the more criminal history points you have, the higher your exposure, right? And so that's where they dangle that carrot in the person's face. It's like, hey, all right, man, well, you're looking at 20 years, right? You're looking at 20 years. And didn't you just have a son? Yeah. You just had a son. He's like 6 months old, right? He's gonna be crawling soon, right? Aren't you supposed to get married soon? You have that fiance, she's a pretty girl, huh? Real pretty girl, right? And and some of these guys will be solid, right, in the beginning, but eventually, when you're looking at decades in prison, when you're looking at potentially the rest of your life in prison, that's when even the most solid of guys, or what people thought were the most solid of guys, end up folding. They end up folding, and they're like, "Man, you tell us what we want to know, and we'll show you some love, right?" And so, and I'll tell you, it is one of the most tense things that you will ever see when you're in the courtroom and there is a snitch on the stand, man. Because a lot of times they won't even look straight up. They won't even look straight up. They'll be looking off to the side, right? They'll be on the witness stand, saying defense table is over here. So their man is sitting across there, and they'll just be like this. And they'll be testifying like this, won't even look over. And you're like, man, it's crazy. But yeah, I mean, those end up being the way that they're able to really solidify their case, because who else would make a better witness than the guy who was right in on the plot, right? The guy who was right shoulder to shoulder as you're making these plans, and they're able to give the play-by-play. And a lot of times, we as defense attorneys will call out the fact that, all right, well, you didn't come in here and want to testify because you're just, fighting for justice, and you're you're helping in the search for the truth. No, you're here because you want to get less time, right? And trying to maybe point out their incentive to either make up stuff, or point out their incentive to say whatever the government wants them to say. But at the end of the day, a lot of times what they're saying checks out because it's what happened, right? And again, that's why their testimony ends up being so powerful. And so I don't know. Like I've seen, just in kind of watching some YouTube videos and things like that, there are thoughts that there may be somebody in the camp who's already decided to flip, and if so, then that just makes things all the more difficult for Durk moving forward. But man, this is one of those things where it's just such a crazy fall from grace, man. Like I know a lot of rappers. I know a lot of rappers. I know I know great rappers who will rap circles probably around your favorite rapper. And the reality is they will not ever be heard by the masses because, it's such a lucky course of events for the stars to align, for somebody to become a star, for somebody to become nationally, internationally known, for somebody to rise to the level of where Durk has gotten to. It's a one in a multi-million chance that you would end up where he ended at. Where you're able to live off your music, where live handsomely, right? Make millions off of your music and be able to take care of so many people through this legitimate business, right? It's the pain and the struggle that you went through that gives you the story to tell, to send that off to the masses, and people feel it, and people, consume it, and they fall in love with you as an artist, as a star, as their voice, right? And the thing is, and I don't know, I don't know enough about Lil Durk. I obviously don't know him personally, to know just how involved he was personally in the street life. But obviously there was some element of it, because people who are not in that element, or people who aren't adjacent to that element, they're not dealing with these type of things, right? They're not in a situation where their homies getting taken out, and where there's a situation where they got to get revenge and take out the other dude, right? So you're just not in that situation. But because he is, what you have to understand is, like they say, money doesn't change who you are. It just turns up the volume on who you already were, right? And so he obviously set up very nicely in terms of where he earned the spot that he earned financially, and he had a lot of cats in his camp that he still was running with. But the thing that you have to understand is those people, yeah, they're along for the ride, right? And you get some of the let's say fringe benefits of being with your homie who made it, right? Where they say a rising tide lifts all boats, but there's only one Durk, right? All the people that are surrounding you aren't in the same position, right? So they may even be, they may be signed to his label, and making music and things like that. And, you get to, when you're having a hotel party, or you're having a house party, and, all the women are coming through, and they laugh a little harder at your jokes, right? You're getting love from women you wouldn't otherwise get love from. You're going to certain events that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. You're living, you may have a car that they break you off with, or they got you set up with your own condo, or whatever. You're gonna get benefits from being close to, you're in this solar system, and by you being around the sun, you're benefiting off of it. But there's still cats that you're man's with, but they're still in that life, right? And if money isn't going to change you, it's definitely not going to have changed the folks who don't have it. They're just next to you. So the reason why I'm saying that comes down to the influence. And if and it's my understanding that he had been, I'm losing whether it was Thug or Durk, who was, I think maybe talking to Wallow or somebody, who was, trying to be like, yo, you got to watch, who you keep in your camp, right? And I go back to the advice from my father, and it was harsh advice. I didn't really like hearing it at the time, but it was, just something to the effect of, watch the company you keep, watch who you hang out with, because you can only be so strong in terms of fighting the influence of people around you. And that's why they say you're the average of the 5 people you hang around with most. And so if you're, Durk was on some whole nother level, and there were all kinds of crazy opportunities that were available to him just by virtue of the rung that he was at on the ladder at that point. And, you have to understand there'd be all kinds of crazy deals that would be available to him, and being able to live a completely different life. But yet you still have, on the sidelines, hey, listen, man, what are we going to do here? Like, he took out our man. Like, we gotta get our get back. And so, I think that it could just have been too big of a wave. And then not only that, like I said, the public influence as well, in terms of Sly Fervant. And but I would just say again, when it comes to influence, you got to watch the company that you keep. And when it comes to revenge, they're just there is no revenge that is going to be sweet enough for you to put all of this at risk. I think he's got kids. a woman who he loves, and it seems as though he found religion, right? I saw that it looks like he found Islam, and that's a beautiful thing. And I'll never knock somebody, finding God and wanting to turn their life around and all of that. That's a beautiful thing, and that's powerful. I'm a man of faith. I believe in God. I'm a God-fearing man. And like I said, I'll never disrespect or minimize or downplay somebody, finding God. But in this situation, and I can't even say it's too late, right? Because just because you're behind the wall doesn't mean that you can't do certain things positive with your life. But it would have been nice for somebody to actually, sit down with that brother and let him know that, this path, it only leads to, it only leads to hell on earth, right? And a person can put out the message, but a person has to be receptive to the message. And sometimes, that type of advice, goes in one ear, right out the other, because the person's so laser focused on what it is that they want to do. But yeah, I would say, just in general, it's not really looking good, because they've connected the dots on this thing. They've connected the dots on this thing, and this is probably still ongoing. As they have these guys in custody, If they haven't managed to flip one of them, that's probably what they're looking to do, because they all, should be facing life, right? Because if they're all in on this conspiracy to commit murder for hire, then they're all facing life. And so when you're facing life, then it's pretty easy to convince somebody, hey, you might be able to come home soon, right? Come home sooner than spending the rest of your life in prison. And so that becomes easy to flip somebody. So in the grand scheme of things, another black man losing their life over something that's nonsense is heartbreaking. And you hate to see it. You'd love to see the day when, like I say, when our youth are able to look in another man's eyes and see the image of God, right? Look in another man's eyes and appreciate what they're looking at their brother, looking at themselves, and having the self-esteem to be appreciative of their own life, and therefore appreciate the lives of others. You know what I'm saying? It just seems like we're so far away from that, but I can only hope that we get there soon. But yeah, this is a tragic story, and we'll be on top of it. Keep you posted on it. Let me know if you have any questions on this. You can leave me a comment below if you have any questions on this Durk situation, or any other type of cases or questions that you have. You guys ask really good questions in the comment section. I really appreciate all the love and support. A lot of you guys have been rocking with me for years. I definitely appreciate it. So that's going to be it for this one. I want to thank you so much for watching, as always. And until next time, peace.